We're back. Apologies, we had a short interruption of about 5 minutes. We're back now. Picking up where we left off, which is on the budget line 46, Board of Selectmen. That's where we were when we took a break.
And Bruce had talked about taking the telephone line here and saying telephone/internet, so that we know.
And putting it all under town hall.
All under town hall is a
Oh,
recommendation.
I think internet should be separate. Telephone is telephone, why not separate that out?
I'm with you.
So two separate lines under town hall, one for.
All under
okay.
town hall.
Okay.
Right now, they're both in that line entitled telephone?
That is correct.
Correct, so you're proposing to
Yeah.
separate them out? Since
Oh, absolutely.
you're
Okay.
making a change anyway?
Right.
Yeah, and it's a different utility.
Okay.
Okay.
And so then there will be no line item in any of the other departments.
Right.
So they will neither be under nor over budget, it'll all be you.
That's right.
Well, actually, it'll be moved to the town hall itself,
Yes.
the building.
Oh, move it to the town hall.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, I
We'll
can
even
see.
be in Board of Selectmen.
So then it's out of everybody's budget and it's under the operations of this building.
I think that's the way it should be.
Okay.
Now, there's always some question, when we try to make a change like this, as to whether we can do this, or this is a Board of Finance. Barbara has said that this is the Board of Finance's document,
Let's,
that they might have
let's
to
request
change.
that Barbara do what she can to
Do whatever
accommodate.
she needs to do.
Well, it is the Board of Selectmen's budget. We can do whatever we want with this. The Board of Finance is the double check to make sure that these departments and things are put in right order, but for the most part, their main concern is the bottom line.
Yeah, but for many years, there was something, and maybe you can go back as far as when you were on the Board of Finance, there was something that we were trying to get changed.
She calls it the chart of accounts, I believe.
Yes, the chart of accounts.
And therefore, I think I believe that, she says that is part of the Board of Finance's purview. And when we so we are not authorized to make changes
Yeah.
to it by moving
My
things. So
guess
if
is
we
the
were,
Board of Finance will be perfectly happy
Yeah.
to do what we
So-
just
They
did.
probably wonder why we did it this way also.
Probably.
And this is just cleaning up the budget, so we're not making any.
I will make that request.
Excellent.
Okay, anything else on the non-salary part of the Board of Selectmen section?
Nope, you happy with it, Bruce?
Yes.
Okay. Joyce, you're happy with it too?
Mhm.
Because I don't see anything that's registered there, okay?
Okay, so up to the salary portion. Joyce, you made a pretty comprehensive presentation to us a few weeks ago. Perhaps you could, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I bet you can explain this, the parts of this $16,000 increase. Obviously, we know that some of it is increase in hours from 30 to 35. That's, I would assume, the lion's share of it. Are you able to break that down?
Not specifically with those figures, because I went back
You guys want to wait
and recalculated
of those figures?
Well, after our meeting and then after the confusion, that number is based on the increased number of hours and the top scale from the management review.
That's how I read it.
That's what that.
That's what that is compiled of.
So it's
composed of.
hourly, hours increase.
Yep.
From 30 to 35, and top
Yep.
scale from management review.
Correct.
That's the whole, and plus, is there a 3% increase in there?
No.
There's not.
Nope.
There's not?
Why wouldn't there be?
In this number there's not?
Not in my number. I did not include a 3%. I took I increased the hours and I put it at the top rate of the management review. I didn't add the 3% in addition to it.
Can I just point of clarity?
Yep.
In all of these departments, they submitted to Barbara
That's correct.
the numbers. So these departments are the ones that chose to put a 3% override on,
No.
or not, or Barbara decided?
Barbara puts that in every year.
So how come she didn't put it in yours?
I don't think that she put, I don't wanna speak for Barbara, but I
Okay.
believe
Yeah.
that the people who put in a request got their request. Somebody who didn't put in a request got the 3%. I believe in a conversation with her, that's what she did.
Which is
Seems
correct.
arbitrary.
The one person chose to
So-
leave the salary line blank and it was put in as 3%, which we'll talk about.
So I think it's one or the other in the budget document.
So,
That's odd.
and she puts it in
That's
there
really odd.
not because she thinks everybody should get 3%, but because just as a talking point.
Yeah, but it really shouldn't even be in here. 3% shouldn't even be in this. It's not her purview to decide whether 3% goes in or not. I think that's just, if she wanted to put another line out that said 3%, this is the increase, but in any event, it's just confusing.
So we should be able to
Yeah, extrapolate.
calculate what, how
That
much.
addition.
So if I could just re-ask then, Joyce, the increase from 40,628 to 56,529 is entirely then an increase of hours weekly from 30 to 35 hours and placement of whatever the number is, maybe you have that there, of the
According to the management
upper
review.
level, the upper level of the management review. Yeah.
3106.
So that's weekly then, this budget reflects 3106 times 35.
That's correct.
Okay, times 52.
That's correct.
Would come out to this number.
That's correct.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Do you know what a percentage increase that is on the hourly rate? Just
Well-
trying to dissect this.
It's from currently on 2604 to 3106.
2604 to 30, where's the number? How much, 2604?
That's correct.
That's a 19% increase.
If you recall, that was not my original request. But in light of looking at things, that's what I put in.
So, let me back up a little bit. If I recall correctly from our conversation with Joyce, one of the ideas that was put forward is if you were going to sit down and just, well, not review, just sort of make sure that the overview of the roles and responsibilities are there and have been being done and managed well. Do you having whether you did it formally or informally, or however it's been done since then?
Joyce and I have had that conversation a couple of times in the past, once, I think yesterday, and then one other time. And maybe I was wrong, but I will say what I said to her, I was not of the belief that the decision was made to do that.
Well, you came out with no motions, but
I mean, I don't,
well, let me.
of all the people in this building, I could evaluate her much easier than anybody else because I spend so much time working directly with her or in the same room with her. But I don't recall that being a directive to do that.
Okay. Let's step away from the word evaluate at this point. Let's just sort of say, what I'm trying to get as a person who's outside and comes in every once in a while, you are the boss, are you happy with this person? This position and
I
how?
know I stated that at the beginning of our session with her.
Okay, so that's helpful, thank you. The next question is, and this sort of dovetails into what we're talking about when we asked other departments to bring their chairman in to advocate for them or not advocate for them, or just it would be, I think, quite helpful in the future, not now, but in the future, by whatever standards we use or decide to use, that you could come and present as well an argument as to why that role should get more work, less work, more help.
Without using real specifics and without using any dollar amounts, I thought I did that at the beginning of our session with Joyce earlier.
Okay.
I thought I made, before we even started the actual session, I opened it up with, I spoke, I thought, fairly glowingly of just for me, but for the whole building.
And I heard that. And if that's what we heard, that's great, then now what we have to do is make that jump from that to this. And that's the hard part.
Oh, yeah.
So, just for my concern that there was expressed concern about what was presented, and we were concerned about what was presented here by Lee, I just went back and went through the COG salary survey myself, and I just picked out a few towns. And I picked out towns of Goshen, Salisbury, Sharon, Washington, Roxbury. I picked those towns, one, because they're close, two, because population-wise, they're basically between the 2,000, 3,000 range in population. I also looked at their grand lists, where you could find the information, and then I just sort of did averages based on that. In my review, and I'm seeing that you're presently making 41? What's the existing budget is 40?
4628.
So again, these numbers I rounded. So it's 40,600, I rolled it up to 41,000. Goshen's making 42 rounded, Sharon's making 47 rounded, Washington's making 43 rounded, Roxbury's making 49 rounded. So the average of those COG people that I see for this position is 45,000. I see in our management that she's making the low midpoint in that. And what I'm trying to wrestle with is your continued support and feeling that you're getting more than a midpoint. How do I rectify that? You know what I mean? And the question is it $56,000 worth, or COG medium of 45, or more? Now, when the things you can get into, you can drill down into the weeds, if you will. You know, Sharon has $750 million worth of value on their grand list, and we have 718. So to me, that's pretty comparable. The administrator there is making 47. I don't know if they do all the jobs. I quite honestly don't really care whether they do.
The one weak point in salary survey is you can never tell what they're doing.
I don't think you can really care about it. I think you have to look at the position and just say, that's what it is. I mean, if you look, I did the selectmen. If you look at the selectmen, they're all over the place, from 66,000 to 78,000. But you don't know who does what and what they manage and what they have an assistant doing. I think you can only take it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
So what's clear to me, at least from my research, and this is an aside, when you sit down with COG next time, could you please ask them to do a real comprehensive salary research that shows, instead of saying somebody's $4.32 an hour, to do the math so that you can just see the numbers? Because it's,
I'm not sure I understand.
So-
I'll be happy to ask them whatever you want.
so when you look at the salary, and this again is an aside, so when you look, I'll show you later, when you look at the salary, they have some people, they have some, like, people in here at $1, you know, $32 an hour.
Some hourly, some salary.
Right, and they should really, if they're gonna compare it as a salary and put it out as a document for us to compare, everybody should be done either on a salary basis or an hourly basis.
Look, I get back to trying to look at the cost to run a town per capita.
Yep.
I just want to get, keep talking, I just want to get something, I'll be right back.
And I think that data is, for certain departments, is most reflective. And there's two departments I think it applies perfectly. Town clerk,
Yep.
selectman / mayor, whatever.
Yep.
All the other departments, it depends a lot upon the geography, type of clientele. Like the assessor's office is all over the place.
Yep.
Finance department.
Highway department, all over the
So,
place.
but those two offices, I think it's very clear.
Yep.
And I've rerun with greater precision my
Yep.
analysis. I'm not gonna distribute this because it's not quite ready for
Yep.
publication. But I conclude that the first selectman is spot on per capita with
Yep.
a log curve based on population. The administrative assistant, I conclude, you know, numbers are numbers, but 17% below predicted line.
You conclude, or the numbers
The numbers, I conclude from reading the numbers.
Okay, it's just making sure.
And the total office, which includes selectmen's salaries and administrative assistants, and in other towns, it would also include other secretarial services, everything to run
Yep.
the selectmen's office. We're about 7% under this analysis, under budget. And I'll share this with you guys really soon, like next week. I just wanna make sure you're not gonna look at it and find an error and throw out the whole thing. So now, I've looked at the numbers we're dealing with today.
Yep.
We've agreed before to increase this job description to include 35 hours a day per week, knowing that this person actually puts in a lot more, but certainly increasing it to 35 is the right, the right move for the job. Now, the hourly increase based on going to the management review to the top is a 19% increase. I suggest that's a bit much. Currently, the salary of $26.04 is below the midpoint, so I think that's too low. So I would suggest a kind of a 3 to 5%-ish, depending on how you look at it, to a rate of about $28 an hour, plus the 35-hour per week. And if you multiply all that out, it comes out to be approximately 50, plus or minus a few hundred. So that's something I would take as a recommendation to discuss. And you want me to repeat those numbers?
I do, thank you.
From the 2604, that's the current salary.
I got it.
And Joyce, if I'm stating a number improperly, please tell me that's wrong. So currently 2604.
Yep.
The budget that's submitted through Barbara is 3106. That's a 19% hourly
I got
increase.
that. Yep.
I think that's
That's
out of line. So some intermediate increase, less than 19%, in addition to the added 5 hours per day per week of work, actually brings her up pretty much in line with the town survey you did, assuming that those numbers are going to increase for next year.
Correct.
So they're going to be in the high 40s to low 50s. And I think we're kind of right, depending on how you look at it.
So, per your recommendation.
High 40s.
What is the hourly number? Did you get an hourly number? Or
Well, you have to give me a percentage. If you take 3%, the magic 3%, it comes out to 2778. 2604 times plus 3% is 2778. Now, I'm not sure, we're not wed to 3%, but we got to start throwing some numbers out.
Can I just back up for a second? The 2604 number that you get here represents a 30-hour number. So we're doing the right thing. So the $31 also, does that represent 30 or 35?
35.
So there's an hourly difference between what we're judging. Do you see what I mean?
Well, yeah, the hourly difference on space is 19%.
Uh-huh.
That's what's in the document?
No. That's what she's currently being paid.
3106 to 2604 is a 19% increase on the hourly rate. Yeah, and on top of that, 5/30th or 1/6 of additional pay time. But that's hours worked, that's hours being paid for.
All right, and so when you get to the 3106, which is a 19% increase, that number represents multiplying by 5 additional hours. You see what I mean? So 3106 times, what is it, 30? And that's 35 hours. So if we just did it on her average work week right now, she would be getting a $48,450 salary. We're increasing her hours on top of that if we increase the number, right?
Probably gonna come out with 56,529.
That's exactly what we're gonna come up with, yes.
Right, well, I say, don't increase it to 3106, that's
Yeah.
a 19% hourly rate
Hourly rate,
increase. Increase it, the rate more modestly. If you look at 3%, it comes out to be 27.78.
okay.
So you're just saying increase it by 3%?
For discussion purposes, if we increase it by
Well,
3%.
increase it by whatever.
Yeah.
Right. If we do it by 3%, it's 27.78,
Yep,
and I'll multiply it out, and I did it before, and I got 50,568, which is roughly 6,000 less than on the current proposed.
That's using 35 hours per week.
35 hours per week with a 3% hourly rate increase.
As opposed to 35 hours a week with a 19% hourly increase, which is what's in the document.
Correct. And I think we're looking at a position that, as we've talked about extensively, the scope of the position has increased considerably. And I think, and so we partially justify the increase in
I would agree with
hours.
that. I wonder, Joyce, I don't mean to put you on the spot, and if you're not sure, don't want to do it, say so. Can you just throw off the top of your head, tell us what things have been either added to your job description or added to your job, even if it's not in the job description, since you started here?
I couldn't quantify that because every day it's different.
Oh, I know it is, but things that, you could probably give me 5 things that you do now that you didn't do 5 years ago. For example, were you in charge of computers for the entire building 5 years ago?
That was a program I probably implemented about 5 years ago or 10 years
I'm
ago.
not pinning you down to exact yearly, or, you know, did you, when you took over you got a little compensation for taking over the community house, but not a lot. But that time has increased dramatically because of use of the building.
Absolutely.
You've taken on.
Well, for example, in today's meeting, I'm the administrator for the transfer station.
Right, well, that was gonna be my next one.
I mean, I help
You do the same thing.
highway out, I help trooper out, you know, those kind of things have evolved. So
Right.
if that's
That's the
the kind of thing you're
that I
talking
was-
about, then
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, no, I wasn't questioning any of them. I imagine that list could double in size if you had some time. Okay.
so let's just, for my simple sake, if we decided today to keep this exact same pay rate, but increase the hours, that's $6,700 raise. And I don't mean to categorize it as a raise, it would be a reflection of hours worked. Okay, so then that's the first thing I come up with. So that's a 47.
You could call that a type of a raise, because the employee is finally getting compensated for the actual hours worked.
Okay, my point is, it's not based on anything we call, what do you wanna call merit, or whatever you wanna call it, it's not based on, it's just physical hours that we recognize that we have been not paying for.
Agreed.
All right, so that's where we start, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so we agree that at least $47,932 increase, would be the rate.
Would be the rate using the present salary times 35?
Times 35,
Okay,
right?
got it.
So then my next question is, okay, I accept that, that's great. The next question is, beyond that, what rationale, is it we are now using the rationale that that position has taken on a considerable amount, or are we saying all those things that went under were not being compensated, and therefore we're evening it out now? And then we have to look at, so I guess maybe a better way to look at it, if this had been compensated and this had been her compensation right now, what is discussion moving forward today as to what has been done?
We're gonna zero in on about the same number. What you just did was increase the work week by 5 hours.
Yep.
And came up with, I think you said a $6,700 increase.
Correct.
Now, on top of that, going forward, based on good job performance and generally in providing some increase in salary, we're going to apply a percentage to that. That's where 19% I think is a bit high. And if you look at 3%, 2778, you come up with the number I kind of threw out there. And I'm not trying to say my number's right, but you come about it a slightly different way, and we ended up kind of in the same place.
Yep.
So maybe we can defer the percent increase discussion and bundle that in with how we discuss it for if we're going to adopt a non-merit-based generic increase or if we want to make individual adjustments.
Okay.
But, you know, certainly whatever the increase we give across the board is warranted here. And I would suggest that we need to look at merit pay, and a little extra merit pay would be deserved to some extent. But we don't have a process for that yet, so we're you know, walking on thin ice when it comes to deciding how to go forward. But 19% to jump right into to what was proposed, I think is too much.
All right, well, again, I'm only going back to what I have, and the average is 45. I see towns that are paying 47 and 49 that are same population and same, if not bigger, grand list levels. So that's why I agree with the existing hours, which rounds it up as 48,000, which is certainly getting close to the top end, and I think we have a very competent, capable person who's doing this job. You working with her all the time, Bruce, we're now at $48,000. Give us reasons.
How do you say that by increasing the hours, it puts it up to the top hourly range? I don't get that.
Well, I don't know what these numbers are, but I'm assuming these ranges are salaried people who work 30, 35 hours. Whether they're compensated for those 30 or 35 hours, I don't know what the multipliers are, nor did I bother with them, because you can't really extrapolate.
Almost every one of them across the board work 35 or more hours.
So what I think we've been doing is not crediting enough hours clearly.
Or hopefully being paid for those.
Well, if you're talking about Sharon, they're being paid $47,000 year round. So
just run through the towns real quick again.
33 hours.
Sharon's 47.
Goshen is $42,000 with a population of 2,900 people and a grand list of $554 million. Salisbury did not have any data.
Right.
Sharon is 47,000 rounded with a population of 2,700 and a $750 million grand list. Very, very
33 hours a week.
at 33 hours a week. Okay, there you go. Washington is at 43,000. They have a population of 3,400, and I could not get their grand list, nor could I get Roxbury's grand list, who have 2,700, I believe, and they pay 49,000
35 hours a week.
at 35 hours a week. So Roxbury is right in our wheelhouse in terms of, well, I don't know what their grand list is. I would presume their grand list is probably equal. They have a lot of big properties there, but they also don't have as much.
What did you say the salary was in Roxbury?
I have 49,000.
46.
I have 46,285.
Well, I did that as a multiplier. Is that a hard number? A real 40?
From the survey, 46,285.
Well, I'm using the same number. The numbers you're using, Chris, are those those are actual? Where'd you get those numbers?
Right off the COG salary that I had emailed to me yesterday, survey salaries.
That's what this is.
Yeah.
Are you looking at the same years though?
I believe so. I believe
2018?
This is the newest one, I believe.
Well, That's what I thought I was looking at.
Not a date on it, but I can.
On the top, it should say 2018 COG salary survey on the first page.
Either, this is all, that's scrap paper, I don't have that.
Like I said,
Well,
I think
you have it
I'm
in
using
front
the
of you?
2017 survey,
You
I
have it
haven't
there in
seen
front
the
of you?
2018 survey.
COG survey, well, just as a sample, can you look at, what do they list your salary as in in what you've got?
40,628.
Okay, I have 39,445.
So you're
Yeah,
looking
that's,
at
I was
last-
working off of the
This
most
must be
recent
a year
numbers.
older than
That's a
that.
year.
Yeah.
Okay. Thought this was brand new.
So I'm still working off 2017 numbers, so this can be easily updated with new numbers.
Okay.
Might I get a copy of that? Okay,
Anyway, my point is that we're rectifying the hours in the position, I think, to reflect what the towns that we most identify with and the position.
mhm.
And I feel comfortable moving the hours up, and I think that's great. That's the first question, that's the first part of our issue, or our, I'm sorry, not issue, our request. And so now, what is the request, 56? 56,
56,529.
and we're looking at 47. And the difference now being from requested to what we believe is fairly compensated is 85, almost $8,600 rounded
And what's that percent?
of what?
That's 18%.
Increase, oh, actually, I wonder what the increase would be over the existing 40.
Right. No.
No, that's not
no,
fair.
No,
Over the-
over your,
47,
right.
okay.
The increase over the existing 40 is 39.
Yeah, that's what's shown in the
That's
budget
shown
there,
on
but
the
no,
document.
I was using Chris's
What do you-
number based on the local, current COG, local town. So again,
It's 18%.
yeah, so it's 19 if you look at it this way, it's 18% if you look at it that way. So again, the numbers we're dealing with on a first level analysis, the numbers we agree on. I mean, it's a question of where you sharpen your pencil. So I'm suggesting we apply an increase. Now, we haven't agreed on any kind of general proposition for town hall.
Right.
But I will again say 18 or 19% is a bit out of line.
Bruce, any thoughts
Yeah,
as
no,
to?
that's a hard sell, yeah. I mean, for a very competent employee, that's a hard sell.
Keep in mind, if you look at the management review and you take what he proposed and what I'm currently making, he proposed a 5% in his verbiage.
Didn't even give some numbers on
He
there?
did, yep.
Yeah,
5% over your existing.
Over the hourly rate, not with the additional hours.
Gotcha.
Again, two separate issues, I agree.
Okay, and you came in asking for more than 5%, went up
I
to
did.
31, which is about
I did.
19%.
That's what you call a good administrator.
Well, question, do we need to really, we've agreed on 35 hours.
Yes.
Do we need to absolutely decide on the percentage increase right now?
I think we agreed at the beginning we were not going to do that.
Yes, it is me that you're speaking about, but I disagree. I think you do need to start making decisions so you can plug the figures in, as we did in other areas, so that you have a true number when Barbara comes back.
And not only that is, if we're agreeing 35 hours, which I do agree, then we need to start applying that across the board in every department. And if we're gonna do that, we better do it now. I mean, we're starting here.
Thank you.
When we start to do the
Applying what?
when we start to do the divisor of someone's salary, we're right now we're dividing it by 30. In most cases, I don't even know, I think we're all over the place, aren't we?
You are all over the board.
So you are all over the place with how many hours somebody works and doesn't work. Now, some are part-time, so that is very clear that that's their part-time. But others, generally speaking, we have 30 to 35 hours, I
To
believe.
40.
I'm sorry,
You're
40
saying
hours?
Park and Rec is 40.
Park and Rec is 40.
It's like, so we need to decide what our multiplier is.
Well, I think we've talked about agreeing that it was 35 hours.
I agree.
The biggest problem is going to be Park and Rec because that comes from the commission again, so I'm not sure the process for establishing that. And we may have to request that the commission agree with our recommendation that be 35. But is there any reason, I mean, that's a normal thing. 35 hours is a normal work week for a short work week. 40 is probably more consistent, but 35 is fine. But it can't be all over the place. So I think
No.
the town hall office hours of 35 hours a week. With the understanding salaried employees have to put in a little extra effort.
And feel that they do.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I'm following you exactly to the letter in that. So you're saying that all town positions, all full-time town positions should, per what you just said, be 35 hours?
Yes. As opposed to arbitrary numbers.
Well, your hours are based on,
My hours as reported by Barbara to the COG for the survey are 30, and, you know, which is why my pay is so high. But I have no qualms whatsoever to say I work most weeks more than 30 hours.
Sure you do.
Maybe not here in the building, but, and
transfer
that doesn't
station.
include working at the transfer station.
That's 400 hours she's
I'll just
making
spend
up.
more time at the transfer station. Well, I mean, is there any reason not in accordance with this policy to say that your work week is 35 hours?
Nothing.
You can say whatever it is, you know.
Well, I know, but there may be a time with a less dedicated first selectman that they have to understand they have to be here 35 hours. That's the work week.
Be here 35.
You know what I mean, yeah, that's the work week. I don't know. I can't argue too many semantics about when you work and when you're not working, but what is the work week? Why should yours be 30 and others different? The town hall work week should be 35 hours for full-time employees. If we choose another number, fine, but why have it be different for different departments?
Unless you're part-time.
Unless you're part-time, it's completely different.
I'll have to mull that over a little bit. I understand what you're saying, but I need to.
Okay, then mull away. But for now, for the current situation.
Yep.
How do we move on? Do we want to give a recommended percentage increase for Joyce to pass on to Barbara for the next revision of the budget?
For Joyce or for this?
For
this
the
document?
administrative
For the
assistant
administrative
position,
assistant, yeah.
Yes.
for Joyce to pass on. Look, we need to get new budget worked out with our slightly revised estimates. One change we're making is 35 hours. We'll discuss other employees, but you know how I feel.
There was, I'm sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
didn't finish your thought.
No,
One other thing we talked about, and it dovetailed into another department, specifically the highway department, is that Joyce has been doing, let me put it this way. I understand, at least from these budget lines, what Joyce's roles are. I think what's outside of this budget line that I see is that Joyce has been working with Rick.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. To me, that's outside, that is not in your job description, is it?
I don't know if it's been added or not. I can tell you in a minute.
Well,
That's
let me just say,
Probably
let me
not.
just say from a management point of view, whenever anything is added, it is imperative that it be seen as either under the auspices of the existing salary or requiring more funds. We talked about it in the transfer station. If you need more hours, we're gonna have to pay for it. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's really, this is where management is really important to make sure you control and cover. Because if you're adding something, and I believe me, we're all there, oh, I can take care of that, no problem. Oh, I can go down to the transfer station, no big deal. Well, all of a sudden,
It is not currently in that.
it is not currently in that.
Correct.
Okay, so with that, the question to this is, board, because we're gonna deal with the highway department as well, who clearly needs some support, at least from what I've seen, in my opinion. And the question that I would pose is, are we seeing the administrative assistant taking over a portion of that internal work or not? And if so, certainly compensation has to happen there.
And I guess, taking that a step further, the question would be, should that compensation be in this line, or should it be in the highway department?
Well, then,
Good question.
yeah, then it kind of gets messy. I mean, to some extent, the administrative assistant to the first selectman has to provide administrative support as needed, and to the extent that, supporting some of Rick's effort, I don't think that that's outside of a normal expectation. If it becomes a major continuing part of the work assignment, then you're right, it's changed the job function.
Though Lee does recommend changing the title to office manager to the first selectman. We, of course, haven't agreed to do that, but.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's semantics.
Yeah, it is semantic.
But I mean, the only reason I bring it up is does that mean that the positions is related only to the first selectman and shouldn't be doing? I think it's wonderful what she does. I see and hear what she does for the highway department. It's great.
Yeah, see, that's why changing the title like that has some implications. That seems to narrow it. We're not doing that.
Well, here's a global picture. You are ahead of all those departments.
Right.
So if Rick needs help, you're in there doing the paperwork for Rick, theoretically.
Theoretically.
If not, Joyce is gonna be doing it because you pass it on to her. So ultimately, it comes to you. Now, we could say, well, in the highway department, we wanna make a clerk or whatever, however we decide to do that. But what I wanna point out is, it has been under you and your process to support the highway department through your office, presently.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and to that degree, it seems the administrator has said, sure, give me the job, I can do it. My question is, because it looks like the highway department needs more support than what it's getting, is this an opportunity to try to make that happen here, or is it an opportunity to say, oh, no, all that goes away from her, and in the highway department is a clerk, or something?
No.
I'm sorry?
I wouldn't be in favor of that. I understand what you're saying, but I wouldn't be in favor of that.
Well, I need a plan. I need an idea. I need a thought as to how we're gonna
Well,
solve
that's
it.
a management discussion about the highway department.
Right now.
How much administrative support does the highway department need on a weekly basis?
But is it done internally or in the highway department's budget line is my question. And that's a management decision that has to be made, but the implications are certainly clear for this person and the compensation. That's where I'm getting at.
I'm good with that. I mean, it's clearly working the way I've seen them work together. I've heard them work together.
I get it.
I've seen the results, so I know it's working. And I don't see it. I think it would be wrong to hire a clerk and not for the highway department.
And wouldn't it get messy to, have a highway department support staff budget line item that's being paid to the administrative assistant in the selectman's office?
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is you wouldn't break it out in there. You would just let the administrative assistant, under the auspices of the first selectman, help support that highway department with billing and with all the things that are happening now, because those are administrative.
And the reason it makes sense now is because when Joyce first started here, Rick didn't have a desk here in town hall. He now does, if you can find it. And so it's a natural for her to pitch in and help him.
I'm just telling you, if I was hired for the job, and then I was told that I'm also gonna do this, while I wouldn't complain, I would say, what is my compensation?
Oh,
And that's what I'm saying, is right now, at least under what I've seen, and how long ago, when did the desk arrive?
shortly after Joyce arrived.
11 years ago?
Some changes, it wasn't because of her, it was probably.
So 11 years ago, the desk arrives and everything's set up and the coordination there and the support's there. And unless we say that under the 2604, that's just been part of the job, you can grow into new things. It seems to me that, again, there's a piece of business that, to me, I could see and understand how that is being covered.
I don't know, because then you take it to the limit that some new little thing comes along that has to be managed out of the selectman's office, and clearly Joyce is gonna get involved in it, so, you know, have to add another 0.2% on because she's gotta spend, 45 minutes a week. I mean, you can get into the weeds and it doesn't make any sense. This is a function that, given the circumstances, partly geography, it's a natural assignment for the assistant to take on.
There's a difference between a highway department support billing system and a new computer program that you have to implement. I see a big difference. What percentage of time does it take you to do that you work with Rick?
That's a tough one.
It varies. I mean, day to day, I spend time every single day when he comes in. We go over the bills, we go over anything, we talk about, whatever he needs something. Right now, as a matter of fact, on my desk, I'm doing his warning for the bridge that we just spoke about. It really varies, and he does still do a lot, and again, I'm more than happy to assist. Whatever he asks, whatever I'm able to help, more than happy. And I do the same for the trooper, I do the same for the transfer station, any of the ancillary departments, obviously.
Those.
Yes, I think you're flying down a rabbit hole. Anybody now that gets a slight increase in job assignments because of a natural add-on is going to say, well, I need another increase in pay because I'm doing this.
Well, Park and Recreation, we gave $2,000, was it?
27.
27, wasn't it?
To work with the seniors.
A few years back.
Yeah, to handle that piece of business. Is that a natural add-on, or is that just sort of a, she should have just taken it on?
Yeah, I think that's a big problem. I don't think that should have happened that way.
Okay. All right, well, I'm at
Okay, so what is your suggestion, that because you think she's actually the position's actually supporting another department that has an increased job requirement, that there should be some added compensation?
That's my rationale. My rationale is that if there are additional hours that are outside her job description right now, and they're, substantial, they may not be substantial, that's why I asked the question, there should be compensation for that.
Okay, but what if it doesn't increase the actual number of hours worked?
Well,
Now at the 35, it probably won't.
Well, then the argument is she's not busy enough. No, seriously, the point is, it's like, if you give somebody more job and they are competent to be able to bring it into their system, fine. That means that you have a good, competent person. But if you have a person who's
Well, you're arguing it both ways. I mean, if it fits within the existing work schedule, now increased by 5 hours, then it really hasn't affected the total number of hours having to be worked.
I can wrap my brain around that. The additional hours hold that, because it's what she's been doing.
So, let me see if I can restate what I think you're trying to say. If it can be identified that the administrative assistant works an extra hour a day supporting the building department, the highway department, that there should be a supplemental pay of 5 hours a week for that support, over and above the 35, because that's extra hours put in to support the highway department.
The 35 hours, the additional 5-hour increase that we're recognizing that is done, obviously has taken into consideration the work that she's doing for the highway department presently. Okay, so that leads to your argument that, okay, well, she's compensated at that number, at the right number. Where I was going was, it was clear to me, from the management review and from discussions with the highway department, that there's going to be additional help, in my opinion, that's going to be needed at the highway department level. as an example, and this is no slight on the highway department, but look how long it took to get 2 signs up when you and I asked for it in July and it wasn't done until December. Again, this is not that was a workflow issue, and I think we have an issue there we have to look at. If indeed we are going to utilize the administrative assistant as we have presently, beyond that, that's where I could see an increase above and beyond where we are now. Is that clear?
Okay, do you think we're at that point?
Again, we haven't had the discussion with the highway department, but it was the sense I got, and Bruce doesn't, at least you said maybe you don't think he needs a clerk or something, or an assistant. But to me, it looked like, and we all know, there are 5 on the crew, right?
5 plus the foreman.
5 plus the foreman. And we know that over this year, there's been sort of, 2, 3 working sometimes full-time. We've had situations that don't always get a full crew. If you don't have a full crew moving, like in the transfer station, somebody's got to go down and help out. And to walk in and see Rick working at a pile of thing when he needs to be out somewhere else, or as the management proposition was that Rick actually stay out of a truck and stay on behind a desk. I don't believe that, but
He doesn't, he wouldn't want to do that.
I don't believe that, but what I'm simply saying is if Rick is actually buried a lot in paperwork or something like that administratively, do we then use this opportunity to
Oh, yeah, I think that's a different analysis. If the highway department is in need of some clerk assistance, and it doesn't justify hiring a person even on a part-time basis, and that was added work outside the 35-hour scope, then I think there may be some way to address it as added hours paid to the administrative assistant.
Do you think that that would be a way to help solve or alleviate at least what was identified in the management program of the highway department and the sense we got from speaking to the highway department?
Yeah, much of which I didn't agree with in
I'm with you. But I'm saying it just take from the administrative point of view.
Yeah.
Do you think your office is a better means in which, by utilizing yourself and your administrative assistant, more compensation or something
Absolutely.
that would then be a better way of supporting the highway department? And do you see that there are opportunities to do so?
Those are things that he can do. He's a smart guy and he knows his way around, but he shouldn't be doing because there's things that he's better at and needed at.
I think that's...
And while Joyce does most of what Rick asks, there are times when I make phone calls for him to a state agency or something like that. So that's sort of my support. All things that he could do,
Sure.
and has done for years probably, but working with the state as I have for 10 years, there's way more requirements now than there was 10 years ago. So.
Yeah. I mean, look, you could do much of the paperwork that Joyce does, but you don't have the time because you're doing something else, and that's why you have an assistant. It's sort of the parallel I'm trying to raise. So,
I don't think we'd want that to happen, but.
No, we would not.
So do you have a recommendation for, the current
well,
incident?
that only handles that issue if indeed, and that's where I would see adding more responsibilities and compensating more for. What that percentage is, how much time would allocate, I don't know.
Okay, we're currently under the assessment that at 35 hours, the assistant can get all the work done, including the support for Rick.
Mm-hmm.
I would think so. Rick's here, he may have something different to say about that.
But if we broaden those,
In a normal.
that support system is where I'm going.
Okay, well,
And-
do you have a recommendation? That what we need to do is get out of this meeting with kind of some numbers to throw to Barbara.
So I would say that if you're talking about additional hours, we need to increase that hourly rate so that would compensate for the additional work done for the highway department. I just don't know what that is, so I can't help you if I don't know how many hours is going to be required to support it, any more than what's above and beyond the 35.
If I could clarify, I'll try. What Jeff is saying is you've agreed that I should be extended to 35 hours with my current responsibilities.
Correct.
In order to wrap up this department, he's suggesting that you come up with what percentage of my hourly rate would get increased in addition to, if that's what you're wishing or having. At a later date, when you meet with the highway department, if it comes out that there's another 5 hours a week worth of work that Rick can roll to me, then you would have to revisit my hours.
What you're already
Right,
doing.
but what I'm currently doing is within the 35 hours, which you've agreed to the 35 hours. Now you just need to agree on what it is you want to do with the hourly rate at the 35, and then this other is a separate issue when you meet with the highway department.
That's correct.
So you're looking for a percentage.
That's
Your other job assignment is to be our filter,
Okay.
because we can't get this straight, and you filter it out and throw it back to us.
I
Just
think
perfect.
that's what we said. She said it well, but I think that's what we said.
She said it in 10 seconds.
And you took how long?
Okay.
So we have the 35 hours, you just need to decide on a percentage.
So let's just have Barbara increase the document to 35, reflect the 35 hours.
At the 2604,
At the 2604 is the.
that's the number she's presently being paid.
That's the present amount that she's being paid,
Which-
yeah.
Well, what,
Or with the 3% that's in there for everybody else.
Or the 5% that the management review verbiage stated. Or the 19% I asked for.
Okay. Was it 5%? Is that what you
Yes,
came
that's
out
what it
to?
works out to. You don't trust me?
I just want to see the number.
To bring it to 2801, Jeff? For 50,978.20? Is that what you came up with? The 5%?
Apparently that's what you came up
I was looking at hourly rate, but
2801.
26 for 1.05, 2734.
2734?
Yeah, well, we can go with that for now.
Yep.
By
Thank
the
you for
way,
your patience.
I forget exactly what we committed to a schedule here today, but I'm gonna have to leave at 1 o'clock. I think I said I could hang around till 2, but things got moved. up.
Leslie passed me a note that Lynn is not available today, the chairman, so she would prefer to postpone to
So
the
Liz,
13th.
okay.
with.
And you have,
And Donna cannot make it, right?
right, she's obviously out of the building.
Oh,
Darlene,
she said she could do ZBA, but she's out of the building.
She's out of the building.
she had a family emergency.
Right.
So Darlene was also on the agenda.
Yes.
Excuse me, no, that's fine, but if you want to do everything else but salary, we could look at the rest of the budget, because that's like,
Yeah, let's do that,
Yeah.
because I've got 45 minutes left.
Do you want me to check with Darlene, or do you want to, is that something you want to postpone?
Or
I
if
mean,
you have to leave at 1, Jeff, what time is it now?
10 after 12.
12:15.
Probably not gonna fit.
Yeah, well, we can do Park and Rec without salary.
Right,
Okay.
that's,
Yeah,
yeah, and just, Darlene's probably watching, but just in case she's not, I'm gonna go down and tell her that, we penciled her in for next time.
Okay, but another item in the selectman's office is the opt-out stipend.
Oh, yes.
Right,
Did
which is
you guys
15.
have a chance to review my policy?
Per your request,
We
I
did.
ran that by the town attorney, and he said the wording's wonderful, who wrote that? And I gave
That's me.
I gave him credit. He said.
I don't care about the credit, but I wanted to point out, I didn't
Yep.
change anything, I just made the language
I asked him to
clearer.
compare the new to the old, he did, I sent him both, and he did, he said it's fine.
And you agreed that when
Yes.
we agreed the union contract, we agreed on 15, and we agreed to make whatever policy we make for them consistent with town hall.
I do.
Okay, so then this number can be reduced to 15.
Correct.
so I have a question segueing into that, are we gonna revisit our pension?
Well,
You just said, whatever policy we make for them, we make for town hall, so I'm just asking the question.
well, no, that's a town policy in our policy manual that we extend to the union per our company policy. The pension is negotiated separately with the union.
We're stuck with that stupid arrangement with the union, as you well know.
Yes, and they now know how stupid it was, but that's a separate negotiation.
Yeah,
The policy on opt-out is a town policy that we can cancel anytime, or increase it,
right.
or change it.
She all right with that? Okay, so Leslie,
So wait, are we done with selectmen? Because there were a lot of other things here. Oh,
Yeah.
we did those, and then we.
So Joyce, we did make an amendment on the opt-out,
Just got,
Excuse me?
on the opt-out,
Yes,
we have, doing that is 15,000, that's the change that you'll have to make.
that's a policy change that you guys have to make. It's not just a,
policy and procedure change.
Yes,
This is Jeff's proposal at the last meeting.
which you didn't act on.
Right.
well, we will. We committed to doing it when we executed the union contract.
You've never discussed it at the Board of Selectmen meeting, ever.
Okay, well, we will, so in order to just throw more workable numbers in, I suggest you put 15 in for that.
Okay, Park and Rec is on page 9, it starts with line 469, however, we're gonna get down to line 479, Department Operations. And note that there are no increases of any substantial amount in here, Leslie, is that correct?
postage went up because the cost of postage has gone up.
Right, yeah, that's it.
That's it. Everything else there is the same. And if you wanna talk about the hourly employees, that's gone up a little bit. Bruce, I do have a question there. Is COG keeping an eye on the conversation at the legislature about possible increase to the minimum wage? Because that certainly could impact.
Yeah, there's been no formal discussion about it, it comes up once in a while, and once in a while we get somebody from the state coming and talking about something that sometimes segues into that. There's real mixed feelings about that, and what you just brought up is one of the big issues for these small towns is
Yeah, we get,
you bump a lifeguard up to $15 an hour, and you've got a lifeguard making more money than your camp director.
right, exactly. Yeah, so it could have that ripple effect if that
Yeah.
goes up, so, yeah, just curious.
So this shows, we're not gonna talk about your salary, but this shows hourly employees with
Up a little bit.
up more than 3% though.
Yeah, so what we looked at were, last year we had a difficult time attracting lifeguards.
Okay.
So the commission asked me to look at lifeguard salaries in the region, which we did, and so that's a little bit of the bump up.
Okay. Along those same lines and we talked a lot about management, not just management review, but management of departments. Can you just explain for me the requirement, the lifeguard requirement for swimming facilities, how many at a time and so forth?
I'm not aware that there's a specific,
But they always had to have 2 there. or
well, we
something.
always have at least 2 for safety reasons.
Is that Kent's policy or is that?
That's Kent's policy. Well, if you remember, however many, it was a very, very long time ago, the young lady that was at the park by herself and got killed. I forget where that was, Massachusetts or whatever, so. But, I mean, if someone gets hurt, one person
No, I'm
cannot
not
do
arguing, I'm
everything.
just trying to.
Yeah, so that is our
Because, you know, as you well
policy.
know, I'm sure it's a concern of yours, and it's a continued concern of mine, it gets voiced once in a while by residents, not often. Having reasonably well-paid lifeguards there on a regular basis all summer without the camp next to nobody.
It ebbs and flows. I mean, some days it's busy, other days it isn't. So we try, so like on the weekend, we have 2 people on staff. We certainly don't have 4 people on staff, that's not necessary. Unless we happen to know that there's an event or something going on, we might have 3. During the week, it's a little bit different because we have swim lessons going on, camp is going on.
And I've asked you this before, and I'll ask you again, and that is, have you been trying to get the lifeguards to do more in their downtime?
John Grant, obviously, as you
Breaking
some
sand
know,
or
he's
what have
doing,
cleaning or-
been doing a lot of work at the park, so, yeah, that was a discussion last year, so the answer is yes.
Is there any pushback from the lifeguards?
Um,
When you get hired as a lifeguard and have to do
What?
all this?
it's in their policy, in their paperwork that they get, so they know ahead of time, I discuss that with them ahead of time, so yeah, once in a while, and I have to go up and say, look, I asked you to do X, Y, and Z, and I expect you to do X, Y, and Z, so.
And because of lack of usage, they do have a lot of downtime. I'm not there all the time, but I get there, 4 or 5 times a summer.
Which is one of the things that the park study will look at, the master plan. You know.
So that park study is slated to look at Henry Park and Kent Commons?
And that's to be paid for through a grant?
How it's gonna be paid for, Chris, I don't know yet. Well, when the committee comes back to the commission with a price, then.
But it's not in this year's budget?
It's not in this year's budget right now, no,
I'll bet there's some grant money out there for that sort of thing.
possibly,
I'll keep an eye out.
yeah.
Well, I certainly have no problem with the non-salary part of your budget. Done a good job with it, as always. So, the director, your salary, director's salary, is that correct? The same amount as proposed? Because she's got 3% in here for just about, I think, every employee. And that's not in here for you? Is that intentional? It's the salary, if you want to see it here.
I only looked at
The salary, your salary is this year.
this is what the commission recommended to put in, I thought.
That's the same, that's the same.
Yep. You have to speak to them, so I can't speak to that.
So what I'm asking, I guess, is because Barbara put 3% in here, as she always does every year for, across the board for everybody, even for some who has to have their lines there left blank. It's not put in here for you, so did the commission specifically go and say, we don't want an increase for the director?
I don't know what Barbara did or didn't do, or why she didn't or didn't put 3% in.
So I should check with Barbara then.
Yeah,
She has 3% in
Well,
here.
that's why we have to meet with Lynn.
right.
And,
Yeah, she has 3% in here for everybody.
I thought on the copy I had yesterday it was on there, but maybe not.
This is one dated February 6th, so
Oh, okay.
check yours.
Yeah, there's the one that went out yesterday, but maybe I looked.
I'll check with that tomorrow. Okay, is there anything else that you want to bring to our attention, since we're just without the, will you be able to get Lynn here at some point, do you think?
Yes, she said is it next week, the 13th, you guys talked about having a meeting that day?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
1 o'clock,
Afternoon.
so if we could be in at 1 o'clock, that would work for her.
Okay.
Leah's requested 1 o'clock as well, can she?
Okay, yeah, she has to leave by 2:30, so.
Okay, yours shouldn't take long, if it's just the salary piece, so.
Yeah,
So maybe we'll do you first, and
okay.
I'll talk to Leah about making sure she gets enough time for hers.
And I guess the only other question I have is, at some point, will you be discussing health insurance, and will you be letting employees know that?
We do have an inquiry from Kona, who they've been the Region 1 insurance company, and now they're ours, since we've grown to a smaller group, to meet with us, Joyce and I, about insurance, hopefully next week,
Okay.
maybe the week after. They have no numbers, the numbers that are in here now, 18.3% increase. I spoke with Barbara, and they're just in there as a placeholder. They mean,
That's how we started
it's
in the last
based on-
cycle, it was
based
around
on
8%.
nothing. This is,
Yeah.
that's not based on anything. It's last year's proposed
It's
increase.
based on that.
So it's really nothing.
Right.
Right.
So,
Well, it's probably a more accurate number than 0.
yes.
So, I mean, it's good to have it in there, and it's probably too high, so
Okay.
something to work with.
So it's always a topic of discussion. We have not discussed it at all.
Yeah, that I just want to be kept in the loop when it comes.
Is the present plan working as far as you're concerned?
It is,
For you?
yeah, the HSA works very nicely.
45.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just because of numbers?
Mm-hmm.
So programs, or fewer programs and fewer,
There's fewer participants, so there's fewer, we don't have 4 baseball teams anymore, so we don't need 4 scorebooks, we
So-
don't need 4 sets of baseballs, blah, blah, blah.
and just, I mean, I know this is a loaded question. Has the board, and I guess we need the board here to really figure out what their overall plan is for recreation, because it has shifted and changed, and I'm not familiar with what it's morphed and shifted to.
More regional approach, Chris. We just had a rec director's breakfast on Monday and, talking with Canaan and hopefully gonna be able to work with them for the first time, and draft a Little League major team to play in their District 6 Little League program, and that would be open to everybody in the region, and then there would also be the traditional Little League programs that we've had, or baseball programs we've had the last few years. So we're trying to work more together to sustain programs because, like Cornwall, Falls Village, Sharon to some degree, have fewer numbers to have
Yeah,
teams.
I get that,
Mhm.
we could see where that was going. My
Mhm.
question, and again, this is to the board, is when you have one kid in the town of Kent who wants to play baseball, is it our obligation to drive them to Norfolk to get on a baseball team? And I don't know if that's, I'm being absurd, but I don't know if that's A, cost effective, and B, is that what the town wants? So that's all, I'd like to understand, because clearly what they've done is they've moved, directed you to do other things, and it'd just be really good to understand for a bottom line of
Well, and
$156,000.
Speaking of directing her to do other things, we will be, when we do have Leslie's commission chair here as well, we will be, I assume, discussing the commission's wish to remove her from some duties that she's presently performing at the senior center.
Mhm.
And she and I had a brief discussion yesterday. I'm unclear as to what they expect her to be doing instead of that.
Which is really part of what I'm asking.
Yeah,
And who is performing that function?
right now, she
No, I
continues
mean,
to because
with the change.
When we're left with it,
well, that's, if you recall, when we were first advised that they wanted to do this, we asked them to please hold off
I
until,
remember that.
because it could end up being a budgetary issue, having to hire someone to do something that she presently does as part of her job description.
mhm.
So I've not heard a good explanation as to why they want to do that and who will be performing that duty going forward, and what do they have in mind for improving her job performance with an additional, what we say, 3 hours a week, Leslie, something like that?
Team or two.
Yeah. So that'll be an interesting part of that discussion.
Yeah, and then we also need to discuss the 35-hour work week, how that interacts with Park and Rec
Everybody.
Commission.
Everybody.
Is that something you've adopted yet or discussed yet, or?
It's our focus.
We were discussing this morning in our lengthy meeting with Joyce, 35-hour work week. And that would be an increase for most people, as you well know.
Well, as long as it fell within boundary lines.
Yeah, looking at the Park and Rec documentation, somebody probably just arbitrarily said, okay, 40-hour work week.
No, it wasn't arbitrary.
I don't know.
That's how they sold the job to the town back in the day, is my understanding.
Yeah,
So-
because we had to hire a person
They
in the
had.
regular marketplace,
Mhm.
so we had to hire them with that. I know that specifically, because I did.
As do I, because I was involved in the commission when it was all volunteer, there was no director.
There was a series of part-time people who kept leaving, and it finally got to the point where,
Well, what happened is that by default, the chairman did all the work.
mm,
So, very similar to most small programs,
Boards, yeah.
and so it got to the point. So it's actually a very interesting arc, if you look at it, because when we started, it was just sort of this, You know, yeah, sure, come on, let's go, you guys co-chair, you did this, we had a person who was part-time and did the work. And then that morphed into, wait, this is a really big job, we had how many kids, we had so many, we had 4 Little League teams, we had big basketball teams going, we had all this going, so there was a lot to juggle and a lot to manage, and then we were doing the programs. And it just seems like that bubble, like in the schools and everything else, is sort of petered out, which is why I would like to ask the Park and Rec what their philosophy is going forward as to how they're gonna deal with it if they're not serving the population we initially tackled the problem with.
Not a trivial proposition, but it should be responsive to the, current status of the town.
Okay, Leslie, do you have any other questions, concerns?
No, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
okay, the only other one we have on this list is town clerk. What time is it now? 12:30? And you gotta leave at 1.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to get started, but I think it probably will be dysfunctional if we do that, be disjointed.
I would hate to do it, break it in half.
No, it would not fair.
All at once.
Yeah, I know there's a lot to cover in that
Part of
department,
the state.
so we need to give it the
It's a-
respect it deserves.
Most definitely.
Okay.
And there's no one else here, right, that we can take?
Well, I would assume that it's specified on the agenda, so there's no one else available that we can do.
All right, so let's just make sure there's no other hole that we're not at least looking at. We're gonna meet register of voters.
Do you want, Donna's back in the building, do you want her for ZBA?
I'd really like to do her all at once, but.
I agree.
Okay,
So-
so I'll say.
Get her with Lynn and John.
Why don't we, so Board of Finance, no one's gonna come from them, correct?
They never have. Their budget is small.
Very small.
It's basically prepared lessons.
I looked at it, didn't seem,
Clerk.
And the auditors are the auditors,
Yeah,
and then actually that worked that number pretty consistently well. The treasurer, we're doing at a different
And,
time.
by the way, let me just pause for a second,
Yeah.
just, I hadn't looked at that number before.
we're already doing.
Line 103, the auditors
Auditors.
for the Board of Finance, in the discussion with the fire department, they essentially pay the same amount of money for auditors. Remember that conversation
Fire
about?
department pays a little bit more, but yes,
Okay,
they pay market rate.
yeah, as opposed to,
They pay more than this?
yeah, that's what just struck me is, I mean, I can clearly see the town Kent needs to have good
Mhm.
auditors and pay
Yep.
$20,000.
Yeah.
The fire department question whether they really even need an auditor. I mean, that's not my business, but it seems to me that if they
Well,
did.
maybe you should suggest to them that they talk with the town.
It has been suggested.
Because she's done a good job for us the last few
Right.
years.
Okay, sorry about
Yeah,
that
no, that's-
interruption, that number just jumped out at me.
It is a big one.
Treasurer, assessor, the assessor's not submitted yet,
So,
tax collector not submitted yet. Assessment appeals not submitted. And conservation, I
Yep.
did contact them after our
I saw
last.
that.
Yeah, we saw the
Saw that
email.
email.
And so they're gonna, and Mike Benjamin, who's not on the Conservation Commission, but is the face of the Clean Energy Group, thought that that was a good idea and that they will probably do that at the next Conservation Committee meeting. So they've already submitted their budgets, they're gonna have to resubmit.
Okay.
But isn't it already on here?
It's, the 4,500 isn't.
Well,
Let's-
why'd supply line go from
Supplies is
755 to
48,
4830?
30,
What line number?
190.
I have no idea what there's, I hadn't noticed
It's
that.
gotta be that number.
It must, maybe they already put it in there even though they were, I'll have to ask Barbara. I was of the belief. Unless they've got some,
Well, it's a lot of supplies.
he's gonna buy a few reams of paper.
That's conserving. Buying in bulk.
Yeah, 3,000 reams of
Town
paper.
clerk, we'll see next meeting. ZBA, hopefully we can lump that in along with all Donna's other hats. Which includes wetlands, building, town hall.
Or the building official, has he submitted?
The building department did.
The building
Yeah.
department.
But you have a separate issue with him
We have a
specifically.
big issue to discuss there. And,
Oh, on the grants, I did hear from the library, who somehow had heard that we were scheduling a meeting on calendar here, what date we picked for the grants meeting. There was a morning in like the third week in February. I think that's probably gonna be a problem for most of the people that we need to see. It is for the library, because one of their co-presidents would really like to be there and can't.
that would be great, yeah.
So we may have to schedule an evening meeting, like we've done in the past, for the library, the fire department, the cemetery, the nursery school, and,
Knock them right out.
yeah, which we've done before.
So I'm just going, I'm sorry to jump back, but on the building officials, can you give me a handle on what we have to do? One, we have to create a budget for that, for the building officials department. There's nothing in compensation there, is that just a separate contract with them?
Correct, he's not
'Cause
an
it's money,
employee.
because it's money in, money out, right? It's a direct,
Right.
so we have two things going on, we have the budget,
And we have to decide.
and then we have to set the, do we have to set the
Rates.
the rates?
He made, I think,
Right.
three proposals to us.
Right,
we have to
and
decide
so-
which one to go with.
So there's not only that issue, but then there's the issue of, is he the person we're hiring? Because you had brought up that question of, the reason we delayed his contract specifically, or the way we had him adhere to the original contract with Bill Jenks, the rationale, I believe, if I recall, was so that, as you had mentioned, do you put it out to everybody? Do you not? Because we hired basically from within, we were caught in a pinch, we paid extra money for that to do so. And now the question before us, and I don't know, do we handle it outside and wait after the budget? What's the process? I don't even know.
No, you should handle it prior, because it could have an impact on your budget.
Yeah.
And the other problem was that the term of his contract didn't coincide with our budget cycle.
That is accurate.
So that's
It's
why,
a calendar contract.
right, so that's why we changed that.
Mhm.
So we'll revisit it in the beginning of July, or effective beginning of
So we
July.
should talk with him.
Now,
Yeah, he needs to come in and not only do we have to do his budget, but then we have to,
I think he'll be one of the ones we talk to on our next meeting, because he's here in the afternoon, and that meeting is scheduled to start at 1 o'clock.
okay, but I guess what I'm not clear on is, he's our existing building official. Are we asking him if he's still interested in the job and renewing his contract?
He is.
Okay, but he is on that pay scale, on that,
There were 2 or 3.
but a modification of the existing pay scale.
Well,
Right.
there were 3. One of them was basically almost the same as what Bill James was getting paid. The one we agreed to in sort of we were in a bit of a bind, was he gets almost the entire fee, gets 90% of the fees.
Mm-hmm.
And we kept the fees the same. So
Mhm.
the one thing that he's proposing, if we wanted to bring that back down to where Bill was, we could increase the fees.
Right.
So we need to make those kind of decisions.
Yeah, I think we probably need to involve Donna in that, to make sure everyone's in agreement with how it works.
Well,
The one that I think it calls for the inspector, increasing the fees, keeping the percentage at, I think it was 76%, which is what Bill was getting, 74, 76%, something like that. Worked for years.
How do our fees compare with other towns?
Our fees are on the low end, among the lowest in the area, which he gave us a paper. They're low. Bill proposed an increase of fees probably 10 years ago. And
What's the process for changing the fee structure?
it's a
We have to adopt it.
We make that decision.
Well, that sounds like a logical thing to do, so, I don't know whose advice is we need to,
I
put that in
think
motion.
we should increase the fees per his proposal, which was, they weren't substantial, they weren't fees that are gonna scare somebody away from doing the job. If they are, then you probably shouldn't be tackling the job, and it will bring his percentage back down to where, it used to be.
But is it our responsibility to protect his fees, or is it our responsibility to protect the taxpayer and the fee base? Or neither?
Oh, we answer to the taxpayers.
I mean, I think the fees that they are is great, you know, I mean, they're there. It's really not, the only way it's skin off our back is if indeed we're funding it more through here, through that this gets to, we're paying for picking up this, which is normally offset by, you know, that
If
person.
he gets 90% of the fees, it's kind of a wash, but, shouldn't that be somewhat of a revenue generator for the town? I mean, it's not huge, but is,
It has been a little bit of one in the past, but this year we're gonna end up with a pretty big hole in the budget because of the decision we made to hire him at the 90% rate. We didn't budget for that.
He'll make his money off of the big things like Kent School projects, high watch projects, those kind of big things. The other stuff's nickel and dime kind of, or maybe a big weekend house. But beyond that, he's
Fix renovations and
little stuff,
I'm putting in a wood stove and kind of
right? So
$5.
I guess my question, and why I brought it back to is I think we need to have that all wrapped up into the budget. And maybe we don't.
We should.
But I think, you know, it'd be good to know what the rates are, so then we can justify, we can understand what projected incomes would be on that for the budget implications. We need to decide whether we're gonna hire somebody, right? And I don't know if it's he, but are we happy with him? Do we know what the department, you know, as you said, input from.
I'm hearing good things, that he's good to work with in the department, he likes the job. Because initially he wasn't sure, he was in agreement to the one-year contract, because he wasn't sure it was gonna work for him.
I think we need to evaluate other comparative towns for fee structure.
Yeah, we have that, I'll pull that.
I believe we're one of the lowest in the state.
We are.
Fee
The
structure.
state,
Yes.
the fees, yes.
He gave us a spreadsheet of that.
Somebody needs to look at it, and I'm not volunteering to come up with a reasonable increase in our fees, not to have an astronomical jump. We don't need to be the top of the pack,
No, we
but
don't.
let's at least
We have that.
be competitive.
I'll
I mean, otherwise,
Refine it.
basically the taxpayers are ending up paying taxes that in other towns they wouldn't be paying. If there's revenue coming in from the permitting process,
all right.
that money's being compensated by tax dollars.
So, and what is your feeling on the hiring process of, or contract renewal of a new, you know, a building official, because that's also.
Well, you know, I've been hard over on announcing openings. Seems to be a very tough position to fill, and maybe since it's an outside contractor, and Don is his supervisor, if you will.
No.
Not really.
Who's his supervisor?
He's a subcontractor.
He has no supervisor, no supervision.
Who's the management of his subcontract?
Bruce.
I guess I am.
All comes down to you, huh?
Yeah, and I've had, as I said, I've had a business dealing with him on a permit, but I was very impressed with his demeanor and his knowledge and so forth. And then I've had a separate conversation with him about how things have gone so far, and is he still interested in, adding on his term? And he is.
And that's great. I think, however, I'm going to assert again that I think we have to have a better perspective from you as to really what he does, because if we don't know what, you know, if we don't know what he does other than anecdotal, and also he came and, you know, checked on something at your house, there's really no way of evaluating going forward whether we want to renew his contract, because you could come back a year from now and say, you know, I've had 7 complaints that this guy never showed up, or I've had, you know, 5 or 6 contractors say that he's great, and I don't mean to pick on him, but that the position is great, and therefore I recommend that we renew this guy's contract because of X, Y, and Z. Then it's not merit, it's just basic compliance to.
Well, I'm the one who usually gets those kind of complaints, and I've gotten none.
But even getting none would be good, but in a compilation of, never heard a complaint, works well with others in downtown, you know what I mean? And that way, we can at least.
Yeah, I've had a conversation with the folks that he works with in the office downstairs.
Yeah, but as much concrete is always helpful.
You know, Chris always comes to these same points, and I'm beginning to really like them. How about this suggestion? All the things you just said, can you reduce it to a memorandum to the board? Something written, because otherwise it's just gonna stay floating around in your head.
Written as relates to the job performance of the building?
Yeah, your recommendation to the board, you as his supervisor, erstwhile supervisor. Just a, you know, a statement of recommendation.
And then just one last point about this material. So I understand the process. Each department submitted a form with any backup behind it?
Yes, which we would normally have here
Okay,
in front of us.
and then why?
And we don't have it. We'll have it, I'm sure. It wasn't offered. I don't know if Barbara didn't know we were having a first meeting or what. We almost always have it in front of us. So
Okay.
I'll make sure we have it at our next meeting, before our next meeting.
Okay, it's just in fairness to everybody who comes, it would be good to have. And that, honestly, that's the working side of, okay, how do we get some structure to comments, and that would be helpful.
No, that everybody does some more extensively than others, but yes, we should have that. They submitted it, so we can have it.
So our next meeting is
The 13th at 1 o'clock.
13th at 1.
That's what I have.
Good.
The 13th at 1.
And as I said, we will most definitely need to schedule an evening meeting for
Yeah, no,
grant recipients.
I'm gonna have to make another statement about my schedule. We're throwing a lot of meetings in here, and you've been very gracious to try to accommodate my irregular schedule. If anything comes up that changes, I would suggest you two go ahead with the meeting unless you feel it's something controversial enough that I need to be there.
The grants, we could probably do that with.
I would say grants you can do without me. But so far, so good. I should be here Thursday, unless JetBlue doesn't fly back on schedule.
There are checks to be signed on my desk.
I came in yesterday to do it, and they weren't done.
They're there if you want time, then you can sign the small, sign the payroll one. They're on my desk.
Do you have to run? I can.
I can bang it out, I think.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
So